So I will give you a brief introduction to what is UDA and how we think we need to move ahead. So I'll be talking about the UDA framework for sustainable blue economy and effective climate change risk management. So I'll try and cover under these heads. Now, when you look at the 21st century new global order, the larger interactions today are happening in the tropical waters. And the tropical waters present a very unique characteristics, both politically, economically, and also from a physical aspect. The rich biodiversity presents a lot of opportunities, but then the way we are dealing with the region, there are a lot of concerns. The Indo-Pacific strategic space is often heard of, and we know the entire global community is now focusing on the Indo-Pacific, but by definition, the Indo-Pacific is the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And what is important for us to understand is that the tropical waters behave in a very different manner, and we need to really understand the uniqueness of the tropical conditions. Now, any strategic perspective, we need to balance people, economy, and nature. When we talk about people, the coastal and the riverine communities or the native communities become very, very important. Often we see in the name of development, these communities or the people get marginalized, and they are normally not part of the larger development process, which creates a lot of discontentment and a lot of issues with them. And then there are also the traditional livelihood opportunities that are getting affected because of whatever the development process that we are trying to bring in. The second is, of course, economy. I mean, as Nishta said, 70% of the earth is oceans. So the connectivity is a major issue, but how we deal with that aspect and what are the fallouts of that needs to be understood. And of course, now we are looking at the oceans for vast underwater resources. How do we manage it? Whether it is food security, whether it is energy security, whole lot of issues are there. And then, of course, what is important for today's discussion is the nature. Climate change risk, sustainable blue economy, acoustic habitat degradation is something which is now slowly being recognized. Now, the challenges, I want to just quickly list down. I don't want to go into the details. 75% of the earth is water. This includes the 5% of fresh water and including the ice cover. But the 90% of the threats and resources are in the underwater domain. I would like to say this a little bit more strongly because the underwater domain awareness needs to be given far more importance if we really want to manage the sustainability and the climate change risk in the planet. It is at present, my thought is that it is not getting the due importance. Then, as I mentioned, the tropical waters and the uniqueness has to be understood right from the policy intervention to technology intervention. Unless the tropical characteristics are not understood, we will not be able to drive it in a proper way. And of course, the post-Cold War era realities need to be understood. I mean, the technology development during the Cold War period, in the name of security, a lot of investment went into the technology development, of course, for the security purpose, which helped many other domains. But today, there is a change reality, and we need to understand that all the four stakeholders need to work together. Pooling of resources and synergy of effort is very, very important. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult for the global south to really be able to part of it. And holistic approach, as we'll see how the UDA framework actually drives a holistic approach. And the West versus the global south. I mean, this debate has to be done in a more nuanced manner. The massive blue economy push also needs to take into account the environmental impact. I mean, many times when we look at the environment impact assessment, it remains a lip service and many aspects do not get covered. I mean, one of the important aspects that I want to bring to your notice is the acoustic habitat degradation. We know the speed of sound in water is 5 times more than in air. So sound becomes the most critical factor below water. So if we do not take notice of the acoustic habitat degradation, the sustainability will become a very big issue. So, and we are increasingly now looking at the oceans for food security and energy security. But the sustainability aspect and the climate change aspect has to be given equal importance. The ESG and the SDG has to be given a UDA push. I mean, I don't see too much of discussion on the underwater domain awareness in both ESG discussions and even the SDG, just one or two of the, but I have written a paper where all the 17 SDGs can be addressed to the UDA framework. Now, coming more specifically to the Indian Ocean region, I mean, India's geostrategic location in the Indian Ocean is very well known, and we do expect India to play a major role. So here the capacity building will become a very, very important aspect. Let me quickly just remind you of, now we see the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific, great power rivalry is a major issue. How do we balance all these aspects? Sri Lanka and Maldives have gone through certain geopolitical issues, and it's well known to all of you. Regional forums are not driven by, I mean, whether it is IORA or BIMSTEC. I think UDA framework can really give answers to all the priorities that these forums, multilateral forums, have put forward. We are definitely discussing with the authorities, and now India will be taking over the IORA from next year, January. So I think there is a lot that the UDA can contribute in terms of meeting the agendas of these multilateral forums. The island nations, like I've been to Sri Lanka multiple times and I've been discussing with their authorities, these countries have become, in spite of being island nations, and Sri Lanka particularly has 7.8 times more sea area than land, but they still have a continental mindset, and they are not really being able to utilize their marine resources or the water resources to an extent that they should. And again, tropical characteristics are not really being given enough importance when we talk about policy. And of course, the capacity and capability building focus has to be towards the underwater space. Now, in India also, we have seen the Sagar visions. Then to support the Sagar vision, there have been announcements in terms of Sagar Mala, and these are mega projects. But I think the skilling or the capacity building has really not been able to recognize the specifics of the underwater space. Then transboundary river management is another big issue, and geopolitically, geostrategically, there's a lot of discussion. But I think UDA can give a lot of answers, and in this, climate change risk management becomes a very, very important issue. Then we've been talking about multimodal transport and supply chain. Here again, acoustic habitat degradation becomes very important. I mean, on the Ganga and the Brahmaputra, which are the national waterway number 1 and 2, the freshwater dolphins are a very, very unique species that are there, and they are endangered. And the inland water transport can have a very, very serious impact on the sustainability of these species. But I don't see, when we talk about environment impact assessment, these aspects are getting covered. And of course, the digital transformation and the Atmanirbharta has to really look at the tropical characteristics, and because we are still running to the west for support in managing our tropical region. So this has to change. This is the framework that we talk about, the UDA framework. You can see the 4 stakeholders, whether it is strategic security, blue economy, sustainability and climate change, or even digital transformation. All of them may have their specific requirement, but the UDA framework can actually bind them together, and the acoustic capacity building and capability building will become the key. So if all of them can come together, pool in resources and synergize their effort, we will have answers to a lot of questions that we face today. And if you look at the vertical construct also, the sensing, analysis and policies, I mean, this gives a comprehensive, structured and inclusive approach. And all these smaller cubes within the larger cube can address the demographic challenge that we face. I mean, the employment or meaningful engagement can be addressed by looking at these smaller cubes, and probably each of those smaller cubes will become multiple more cubes, which will address those specific applications that we talk about. Marine spatial planning is nothing but the digital manifestation of the digital transformation. This is a spatiotemporal map that you see of underwater noise in the Indian Ocean. We are happy to inform that our paper was sent by the Government of India to the International Maritime Organization for underwater noise. And because of that, the Government of India has been nominated as a lead nation for managing underwater noise in the Indian Ocean. And now a task force is being formed under that to actually drive the underwater noise pollution issue due to shipping for the entire region. So probably we'll get an opportunity to contribute and support capacity building for all the 27 countries in the region. And MSP can be talked about in various other fields. I mean, so we have, as a team, we have built a massive MSP digital tool where multiple aspects, not just limited to the sustainability or climate change, even for resource availability or resource mapping, and also for the freshwater systems. And what we are in terms of MSP, as you know, is being driven by the Intergovernmental Ocean Commission of the UN, and the West has been pushing this. But what we bring to the table is the modeling and simulation approach, because the West is trying to say that you put sensors, but say even if we talk about the Indian EZ, we're talking about 3.7 million square kilometers. How many sensors can we put? So modeling and simulation is the best way to take it forward. I'll not go into too much details on this. And when we talk about digital transformation, we have categorized this into three broad categories. I mean, the manpower or the capacity building. First is the data, high-end data analytics. And given India's capability in this, I think we can be a real leader in driving this. The second would be, once the data is collected, the interpretation or the analysis will require domain specialists, which can be, we have such a large population, and we have a young aspirational youth who can really be part of this meaningful initiative. And the third is the field deployment specialist. So typically the coastal and the riverine community youngsters, youth can be actually taken into this, and they will be able to carry forward their traditional practices in helping us in sensor deployment and also in terms of sample collections in the water bodies. So I think as a way ahead, I would recommend MSP at a global level, driven by the UDA, skilling at a regional level, research projects to support this, capacity and capability building, community engagement, and comprehensive and inclusive framework. I mean, how can we, I mean, as you saw the three categories, how can we take all the categories of people? I mean, whether it is high-end data analytics, whether it is domain specialist, or even the community people for the field work. So I would recommend an outreach, engage, sustain. Outreach is to sensitize everybody, then engage with them at multiple levels through internships, fellowships, and also engaging with the industry and stakeholders. And then to sustain it through very specific projects, whether it is policy intervention or technology intervention, we need to take it in a more sustained manner. And then looking at a center of excellence, which covers all the 5 pillars, that is research, incubation, skilling, academic courses, and also strategy center.